Hi everyone. Today, I'm going to tell you the story of two armored cruisers of the Imperial Japanese Navy, Kasuga and Nisshin. What makes their story particularly fascinating is the impact they had on the Russo-Japanese War, and the fact that they marked the beginning of an entirely new class of warships, the battle cruisers. These were not originally Japanese designs. In fact, they were part of a private Italian project, the Giuseppe Garibaldi class, developed by the shipbuilding company Ansaldo C. The design proved immensely popular, and between 1894 and 1902, 10 cruisers of this type were built for 4 different nations. The two ships in our story were initially ordered by the Royal Italian Navy. But in 1902, they were sold to Argentina during the height of its naval arms race with Chile. However, a shift in political tension and Argentina's financial difficulties led to an unexpected opportunity. The cruisers were placed back on the market before delivery. In 1903, Argentina offered the unfinished vessels to the Russian Empire. But the Russian Naval Ministry, convinced that Japan posed no real threat, dragged its feet. Bureaucratic delays and strategic miscalculations opened the door for Japan to act, and act quickly. Working through British intermediaries, Japan intercepted the deal and acquired the cruisers. Construction was hastily completed in Genoa. To avoid possible interception at the Suez Canal by Russian forces, the ships were rerouted and sailed the long way around Africa. They arrived in Japan in February 1904, just in time for war. During the Russo-Japanese War, Kasuga and Nisshin took part in the initial attack on Port Arthur in February 1904. In the Battle of the Yellow Sea, Nisshin was hit 9 times but survived. And at the pivotal Battle of Tsushima, both cruisers played a critical role. A 254mm shell from Kasuga struck the Russian battleship Knyaz-Suvorov, inflicting serious damage. The next morning, the surviving Russian ships were spotted by the Japanese near the Liancourt Rocks. Kasuga reached them around 10 a.m. Choosing to engage from long range to minimize risk, she opened fire on the battleship Imperator Nikolai I from a distance of 9,100 meters. On her third salvo, Kasuga struck the Russian ship's smokestack, and shortly after, the Russian fleet surrendered. During the engagement, Kasuga fired a total of 50 10-inch shells and 103 8-inch shells. However, due to poor visibility and the submersion of many Russian vessels, the only confirmed hits were 2 10-inch shells that struck the battleship RL. In return, Kasuga was hit by one 12-inch shell, one 6-inch shell, and an unidentified round, but none of them caused any significant damage. Had Russia acted faster and secured these vessels, its fleet may have been significantly stronger, and the disaster at Tsushima might have been avoided. These two cruisers stand as a prime example of how a single missed diplomatic opportunity and bureaucratic complacency can alter the course of a war. The Japanese Navy's successful combat deployment of armored cruisers during the Russo-Japanese War drew intense scrutiny from naval architects worldwide. This experience soon catalyzed the evolution of the armored cruiser concept into the dreadnought-era battlecruiser. Next, we'll take a closer look at the design of these ships. But this time, I won't be taking the usual approach. Today, I'm going to read to you an article published in the Engineering magazine on April 21, 1905. It's titled The Armored Cruisers Kasuga and Nisshin of the Imperial Japanese Navy, written by Colonel N.L. Bowden. Now, for those who have never heard of Engineering magazine, let me give you a brief introduction. It was an American illustrated monthly journal dedicated to industrial progress, engineering, and technology. First published in 1891, it ran until 1927 and was known for its detailed and insightful articles on cutting-edge developments of its time. So then, in his article about the cruisers Kasuga and Nisshin, Colonel N.L. Bowden writes, "I have written this paper on the armored cruisers Kasuga and Nisshin, of the Imperial Japanese Navy, in accordance with the kind suggestion of Sir W. H. White. Their authority and their benevolence dissipated my diffidence in the matter, and it only remained for me to try and do my task as best I could. I am not sure of having succeeded, but have endeavored as much as possible to give the authentic and correct facts, whatever their value may be." The cruisers Kasuga and Nisshin are the last of a series of sister ships from Italy exported, stretching over a period of about 11 years, from 1893 to 1904. They had prototypes in the earlier Italian cruisers Carlo Alberto and Vita Pisani, which, except that the armament was less powerful, were of practically the same design. As a main armament, the Carlo Alberto and Vita Pisani had 12 6-inch guns, while the Garibaldi, the first of the list in the Kasuga and Nisshin type, had 2 10-inch guns and 10 6-inch guns. But, as compensation, the former ships had a long forecastle, which made them more suitable to ocean steaming and long commissions on distant stations. The genesis of the Carlo Alberto and Vita Pisani was, as has been said, of a protected cruiser, protected until it had become in fact a fast armored cruiser, and the standard for some time, being adopted by the Italian Minister of Marine. The whole design had in it much resemblance to warships that had been previously built for speed more or less, with a heavy gun or two, more rarely to depend more on its warship having its side armored. The fact of a ship design being repeated once or even twice during a long period does not always mean the design may deserve and tend to still be cherished by the present generation, but some of the old designs, like those of Carlo Alberto, are not to be sneered at. They in fact showed the way, and were based upon intelligent principle, for which the Argentine government sent one just lately completed ship, General Belgrano, and one later now under the flag of the Japanese Navy, in the Kasuga and Nisshin. It is well known that the orders for the Japanese government of the Kasuga and Nisshin, which, under the name Rivadavia and Moreno, were to be constructed for the Argentine government, was mainly due to the same circumstances caused the Cristobal Colon to come to pass from the Italian builders to British hands. Though type vessels and changes intentionally, because although they were all classed as battleships, not one ship of the whole of the 10 was up to the first class. For example, the Varese, with super protection like Garibaldi and San Martin, had cylindrical boilers. The Kasuga and Nisshin had Belleville boilers, and their protected deck was not entirely effective. Real improvements were, however, made, such as increased size of turrets, plant of strength, better development of the electrical arrangements, especially in the Kasuga and Nisshin, the comparatively expensive, large, and perfected in all details. The ships are classified with the following dimensions. Displacement, approximately, 7,600 tons. Designed speed, 20 knots. Horsepower, 13,500. Complete supply of coal, 980 tons. Supplementary supply of coal, 600 tons. The length of the cruisers was 106.5 meters. The side upper parts, below the barbets and turrets, had additional sloped armor inclining inward. The number of 6-inch guns had increased protection, while the original designs were with turrets only. In Kasuga, the 10-inch gun is fitted for fore and aft fire, and the fore gun is placed above the stern gun. The transverse bulkhead was given extra protection and electric fittings changed as trials were conducted between ships of the same design. In regard to the armament, which will be dealt with more detail hereafter, it will suffice now to call attention to the important alterations, for instance, relating to the disposition of the heavy turrets and their relation by weight and ship's structure to other features. The internal layout is of much interest, as is shown below. The boiler rooms are placed fore and aft the engine room, with equal distances. In the Kasuga and Nisshin, Belleville boilers were placed athwartship in more compact spaces and allowed more room above for internal fittings and ventilation. From the foregoing it may be seen that the Kasuga and Nisshin are the most complete and best developed of the series of cruisers of the Garibaldi class, and in their present condition are well adapted for the particular service for which they have been acquired by the Imperial Japanese Navy. These vessels, though described as cruisers, may, in many respects, be regarded as approaching battleships. Their heavy armament, moderate but sufficient protection, and good coal endurance render them suitable for distant service in a fleet, especially in the absence of any enemy of overwhelming force. It is interesting to note that, although originating in Italy, these ships found homes in 4 different navies, the Italian, Spanish, Argentine, and Japanese, a testimony not only to the excellence of the design but also to the adaptability of the type to various national requirements. The principal improvements that mark Kasuga and Nisshin above their predecessors consist in stronger turret construction and improved working gear, more spacious accommodation for crew and officers, rearranged machinery spaces, allowing for better maintenance and efficiency, improved electric lighting and fire control installations, better use of coal and improved steaming economy over long distances. These modifications, made under the supervision of the Japanese authorities before acceptance, have made Kasuga and Nisshin the finest examples of the type, and their performance in active service has justified the confidence placed in them. The main armor belt along the waterline was up to 150 mm thick in the central part of the ship and decreased toward the bow and stern. The upper part of the belt reached 100 mm. Transverse bulkheads were 130 mm. The deck was up to 38 mm thick on the slopes and 25 mm on the flat part. The turrets were protected by 152 mm armor, and the barbets by up to 200 mm. The conning tower had 150 mm of armor. The ship's displacement was about 7,700 tons, the length about 111 meters, the width 18.7 meters, and the draft 7.2 meters. The main battery included 2 254mm guns, 10-inch, in twin turrets. These were 40 caliber Armstrong guns. The shells weighed about 225 kilograms and had a muzzle velocity of about 690 meters per second. The rate of fire was 1 to 1.5 rounds per minute. The maximum range was about 18,000 meters. The guns were supplied with 120 shells per barrel. The secondary armament consisted of 10 152mm, 6-inch, Armstrong guns, located in armored casemates along the sides. These were also 40 caliber guns with a shell weight of 45 kilograms and a muzzle velocity of 780 meters per second. The rate of fire was 5 to 7 rounds per minute. The total ammunition load was 150 rounds per gun. The ship also carried a tertiary battery of rapid-firing 76mm guns, 3-inch, 12 in total, for defense against torpedo boats. In addition, there were small-caliber guns, 47mm and 37mm, as well as 4 450mm torpedo tubes, 2 on each side of the hull. The propelling machinery consisted of 2 twin sets of vertical triple expansion engines, driving 2 screws, and being fitted in the central part of the ship in 2 longitudinal engine rooms separated by the central longitudinal bulkhead. Steam is supplied by 8 cylindrical boilers in 2 groups of 4 boilers each, one placed forward and one aft of the engine room. Each group of boilers consists of 2 double-ended and 2 single-ended boilers in 2 separate compartments, the double-enders being in the inner compartments and the single-ended in the outer. Forced draft is obtained by means of 12 steam fans, 9 in each stokehold, under the closed ash pit system, with hatch closed or hatch closed with jumper bars to keep the hatch wide 4-inch down. Air passes in separate flues leading to the stokehold. The coal consumption on the natural draft trial was 0.896 kilograms per indicated horsepower per hour. On the trial trips, the trials being essentially river trials, and observations being taken for horizontal range by special range finders, the ship was in the hands of the Italian Navy. However, according to the results, which appeared under the same conditions to be reached by the Kasuga and Nisshin entirely independent, it was thought by the Japanese naval authorities, after the suggestion of Mr. Normand, to alter the propellers in the former design from 4 blades to 3 blades of somewhat different form. The effect of the new arrangement was supposed to lead to results superior to any propeller in both cases. They say, by the way, that speed was improved by the new propeller in Nisshin. The electric power station which, in the Giuseppe Garibaldi, consisted of 2 continuous current dynamos, having a total power of 150 kilowatts, has been increased by 60% by the addition of 1 similar dynamo. The 2 dynamos were located, 3 in the dynamo room below the armor deck, and 2 on the main deck inside the armored citadel. 3 dynamos were intended for general use, and also as reserve for the fire installation. The power plant, and the supplementary steam supply, was as follows: lighting of the 4 searchlights of 120 amperes, 2 for signal lamps, 4 at a minimum of 300, the supply current to many electric motors used for auxiliary motors, refrigerating plant motors, ventilating fans, ash elevators, ammunition hoists, winches, workshop, and sea. All the winches are located in metallic watertight cabins, or supplied by the dynamos in the forward battery, being propelled by Giuseppe Garibaldi steam plant. So, the article in Engineering magazine has given us a rare contemporary look into the design philosophy behind the ships Kasuga and Nisshin. These ships were a product of their time, a blend of speed, armor, and firepower that reflected the transitional era between traditional armored cruisers and the coming age of battle cruisers. Their impact on naval history was far greater than their size might suggest, and their design left a lasting legacy in warship evolution around the world. Thanks for watching.